Hello everybody, how are you going? And welcome to something that I've seen being requested many a time, and that is the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald by Gordon Lightfoot, of which I know virtually nothing about besides the fact that it's a boat in a sea or a storm or something. Okay. This is what I'm gonna have to sit back for and just read and listen.
The legend lives on from the Chippewa on down of the big lake they call Gitchagumi. The lake, it is said, never gives up her dead when the skies of November turn gloomy.
Oh, it's this kind of
With
song.
a load of iron ore, 26,000 tons more than the Edmund Fitzgerald weighed empty. That good ship and true was a bone to be chewed when the gales of November came early. The ship was the pride of the American side, coming back from some mill in Wisconsin. As the big freighters go, it was bigger than most, with a crew and good captain well seasoned. Concluding some terms with a couple of steel firms when they left fully loaded for Cleveland. Then later that night when the ship's bell rang, could it be the north wind they'd been feeling?
Now look, I do have to pause it eventually and just try and take it all in, and like I said, I didn't know what kind of song I was going to be in for, but it's so poetic in terms of the delivery of the entire thing. You're really feeling as though you're being taken on this journey, as though you're along with the ride of the boat. I wouldn't exactly say on it just yet. I'm not entrenched in it. Obviously, there was still plenty more of the song and the story to go. However, I do want to look back and just pick apart a couple of these lyrics. Hopefully, people can give me a little bit more context surrounding some of them as well. I would also say that it has its fair share of literal lines in here, as it says, as the big freighters go, it was bigger than most. And to be fair, I have no idea how big and how small these kind of freighters that operate on these lakes are, because I still find it, I think, difficult to wrap my head around how big the Great Lakes truly are. I mean, I know that they're called inland seas and people can't really see to the other side of them, or you can't see to the other side of them, but it's still difficult to really just know how big that truly is. I mean, even seeing them from a satellite or a space station, surely that's going to be maybe then when you can try and get it, but then you're kind of so removed. I don't really know if you'll get the true scale of them, and I don't really know if you ever could without sailing the seas, so to say, of these things. I mean, they're so massive that they would allow quite large boats to be in them. I don't know, do they allow full-size ocean-going vessels to go in them? Is there even regulations surrounding what is a maximum size and a minimum size? Have things changed? Because I even didn't know that they would have their own weather systems, but of course they do, and people have told me that. And so when I see when the gales of November gave early, I mean, I guess they just were unprepared. Maybe shipping stops earlier or later in the year for the winter months. It stops so it doesn't get frozen over. I don't know. Regardless, that is certainly not going to be the end of it, as there is still plenty more of the song to go. And like I said, I was caught off guard about it. I didn't know what to expect, but I do love the way it's presented. Just, it's so true to the kind of storytelling nature of what this entire thing's about.
Concluding some terms with a couple of steel firms when they left fully loaded for Cleveland. Then later that night when the ship's bell rang, could it be the north wind they've been feeling?
Cold. Try not to read ahead, but it's so...
The wind in the wires made a tattletale sound, and the wave broke over the railing. And every man knew, as the captain did too, 'twas the witch of November come stealing. The dawn came late and the breakfast had to wait when the gales of November came slashing. When afternoon came, it was freezing rain in the face of a hurricane west wind.
Oh, is that what it is? So it's not even just November, it's a hurricane took the Edmund Fitzgerald down. And I guess I've never really thought about how big ships really do in absolute extreme weather conditions out in the ocean. I mean, I guess they certainly would try to avoid them at all costs, but what happens if it kind of develops on top of you? And in the case where you're actually just in a more confined area, you can't just run around, I don't know, the southern tip of South America or Africa or something just to escape an entire tropical cyclone or anything like that. How do you manage that? Do you just not send people out? But these things can move so quickly. Yeah, there is some serious logistics that go on when moving this amount of cargo all around the world. And even though these shipping routes are going to be operating on more of a domestic scale, even though, like I said, I'm sure you can have some big boats that won't surely have the volume of international shipping. I mean, I guess it is between Canada and the US and even almost domestically across the Great Lakes between, I don't know, Ohio, and they even said coming back from some mill in Wisconsin, and then only a few lines later they say they're left fully loaded for Cleveland, and that does certainly seem to be talking about both mill being wood and then transitioning into steel. But this boat is getting around, that's for sure, and so I wonder how many Ks, nautical miles, trips, cargo capacities, or I don't even know what you would call them, but I'm sure that it had a hell of a run. Like they say, the ship's captain was well seasoned, but then contrarily they also go to say that the dawn came late and the breakfast had to wait. There was no seasoning, there was no breakfast, there was no nothing, no light, no anything, and no hope for this ship is what I'm getting at.
When supper time came, the old cook came on deck saying, fellas, it's too rough to feed you.
Not seasoned.
At 7 p.m. a main hatchway caved in. He said, fellas, it's been good to know ya. The captain wired in, he had water coming in, and the good ship and crew was in peril. Later that night when his lights went out of sight, came the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Does anyone know where the love of God goes when the waves turn the minutes to hours? The searchers all say they'd have made Whitefish Bay if they'd put 15 more miles behind her. They might have split up or they might have capsized. They may have broke deep and took water. And all that remains is the faces and the names of the wives and the sons and the daughters.
Before they continue, I love the amount of breath and air that they're allowing, like all these little guitar riffs and solos and just interludes, you could call them, that just give it so much time to breathe, and I mean so much time to process what they've just said. Like even that finishing couple of lines, they may have broke deep and took water, they may have split up and they may have capsized. Like even, like I said, just taking you along. I feel as though now you were truly on the boat. Like they said, there's no time to feed you, and fellas, it has been good to know you. Like you're really just in the kitchen, in the stables, in all these different areas in this ship, and then even just transferring you into the search crew's point of view, just going, they don't know where they are. All that remains is the faces and the names of the wives and the sons and the daughters. Like just knowing what happened, but not knowing how or where or even when. I mean, I don't even know when did this happen. I mean, it's not the 1800s, but is it the 30s? Is it the 70s? Is it... I don't know. I really don't. And honestly, the thing that I'm struggling with the most is just the fact that obviously they have the lyrics on the screen, and so I'm kind of compelled to be entwined in the story, so I just want to be reading them and traveling along with the entire thing, but then it's also then almost taking you out of the song, not to be enjoying the song as much because you're too busy reading. It's like having subtitles ruining the entire plot of what's about to happen. So as long as I can limit myself to not read the entire paragraph ahead, because lyrically it's a very slow melodic song, which is fine, but I don't want to get too far ahead of the story, just not be right there with everyone. Like when the waves turn the minutes to hours, you can just feel that with the hurricane and the cyclones and all those kind of, like I said, extreme weather events that just completely elongate time. Like they say, time flies when you're having fun, but man, does it work the other way around.
Lake Huron rolls, Superior sings in the rooms of her ice water mansion. Old Michigan steams like a young man's dreams. The islands and bays are for sportsmen. And farther below, Lake Ontario takes in what Lake Erie can send her. The iron boats go, as the mariners all know, with the gales of November remembered. In a musty old hall in Detroit, they prayed in the Maritime Sailors' Cathedral. The church bell chimed till it rang 29 times for each man on the Edmund Fitzgerald. The legend lives on from the Chippewa on down of the big lake they call Gitchagumi. Superior, they said, never gives up her dead when the gales of November come early.
It's just, I don't know, it's almost undescribably, it's a haunting song for sure, but it seems to offer so much closure, and I guess I should just let it play out now. Oh, man. To be closing with the it's very interesting, that's for sure. I mean, there we go. That is obviously the entire song concluded, I will say that. I do love the imagery as well. I've just been staring at this boat and trying to pick it apart, see, just going, okay, trying to get some scale, trying to get some, I don't know, structural stability and what kind of cargo in this photo it may be carrying. It's a bit impossible to know, but it's a certainly interesting ship nonetheless. I guess I haven't really ever studied a cargo ship like that, I must say, but even just picking about the entire story, it was carrying iron, I believe is what it said at the time. It mentioned the mill, like I said, but man, there's just so much history in this song. It's so beautifully written. And it's so beautifully simple as well. Like the guitar absolutely carries it. There's obviously other instruments as well, but like I said, the amount of air and room that this entire song allows itself to have just to breathe throughout the entire thing. And even like I said, where I wanted to say, just then following up and repeating this little snippet here, this little chorus, if you want to call it a chorus, it really just wraps up the entire story beautifully. And even just Superior, they say, never gives up her dead when the gales of November come early. And I was trying to think about why November would be November. Like, it's so often mentioned in this entire song. Like, it's the thing that sent every or many ships to their end and to the deep. And I'm sure that there is not going to be a one-size-fits-all answer to that kind of a question. But is it the ice? Is it the wind? Is it the mixture of cooling air coming from the north, they seem? So I guess the cooling air is coming from the north. It may make a whole bundle more storms occur in these areas. That's the kind of idea that I'm getting. But then why send the ships out if you kind of know that this is happening? But then they said it came early. So interesting. It's one of those things where there's so many possible ways that it could have gone differently. And obviously we know the history. I mean, this song points us in all the directions, painfully at that, but it points us to the true nature of what happened that night. I mean, I'd love to know, they didn't seem to say anyone survived, but all the almost stories that they were saying, like from the cook to the other men on board, all of those kind of things, you You feel it. You really know what they're talking about when they're saying, okay, we cannot feed you. It's too rough. It's too this. It's an interesting feeling to have, to be so entranced by the song and almost feeling happy because it's a joyful song, not a joyful song, but you certainly enjoy the song. But it's a horrific song at the same time. It's such a weird mix of emotions, and I can understand why so many people wanted me to look at it. And so I guess, like I said earlier, the song was always going to open up so many questions about this entire event and all the surrounding context of it. But I truly do want to know, for Gordon Lightfoot, what made him or them as a team or whatever, whoever wrote the song and performed the song, what made them write it? Is it of the time? Is it 20 years later? That is certainly going to be another question that just adds to the scroll of questions. It's almost probably as many questions as there is lines in this entire thing, but no, for Gordon or whoever wrote this song, well done. It is a beautiful tale of a horrific event, and that really just pulls on the heartstrings of both, I can only imagine, Canadians, Americans, and I can speak on the rest of the world combined.